Tobi, how are you?
Pretty good. Doing great. The last days of summer. The weather is incredible today. So when you get a chance, go outside.
It is. It is. I'm looking outside right now and listening to the glorious whine of the cicada bugs that I may have to close the window because it's
It's
incredibly
great.
loud.
I think
Uh, I'm gonna roll over and do that because I probably should have done that when we had the stream
mm-hmm.
starting soon screen up,
All the
but
30
alas,
minutes
I did
before
not.
that.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, if you are just tuning in, this is Labs Live. Thank you for joining us today. If you get a chance, as we're kind of waiting for some folks to pop into the stream, head over to our social channels. We're pretty much on every platform, right,
Oh,
Tobi?
yep. Besides
We're
TikTok.
worldwide.
But we're on everything.
Besides TikTok?
Yep.
You're right. We're not on TikTok. Do you have TikTok?
I do not.
No. Okay.
I had it for like one day, and I just like, this is pointless. But people still send me the memes and the videos, so it's not like I'm missing out.
You don't really need it. Yeah.
I don't need it. Yeah.
It all ends up on Instagram anyways, right?
True. Instagram Reels.
Yeah, interesting feature. Anyways, we're back after I think about a month, right? And if you've never tuned in before, Labs Live is I would call it our more buttoned up show, right? A little bit more business focused and prepared. Friday 15 is our fun stream that we have every Friday, but we have Labs Live once a month. And today we're talking about remote hiring and remote onboarding. It feels very appropriate, right?
Yeah, for the times, and Jackie and Karen will be joining us pretty soon. And it's just been how I think for our company, we've always been very remote friendly. And I think there's just a lot of learnings that working, especially with our on-site team, which you will learn more about in a little bit, how like other companies have adjusted to like hiring remote or being more comfortable with doing that now, and then onboarding, which is like a big part of it as well. So I've been looking forward to this since we put up the lineup. So looking forward to hearing from Jackie and Karen.
I like that you called it a lineup. It's very
all-star lineup.
Yeah, it's very Tobi of you. All right. Without any more delay, let's jump right into this. I'm going to start by introducing first Jackie McLaughlin. She's our director of OnSite here at Detroit Labs. And for those that don't know what we mean by OnSite, it's essentially kind of like staffing, I would say, Tobi. But I would call it more of like an integrated type program. So for companies out there that are looking to grow their teams, looking to bring in really great talent that not only are skilled, but create a wonderful environment. And I mean, high performing teams are really where it's at, not necessarily any one individual. And so our OnSite, division, business unit, whatever you want to call it, can really help scale teams and bring in the right talent and the right fits. And so we're going to welcome Jackie to the stream. Welcome, Jackie. How are you?
Hello, I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic. All right. And we have another guest, Tobi, Karen Liska-Evans, and she is a people partner at Detroit Labs, specifically in the OnSite group. And I am not even going to pretend to attempt to explain people partner. And Karen will do a much, much better job at that. Karen, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you guys?
Fantastic. Please tell us about a people partner, what it is that that you do and what that role is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. People partner is a role that's pretty unique to Labs OnSite, and it's in place to be sort of a really important connection and relationship between our OnSite team members, the people that we recruit and hire and bring into companies, and between the company itself and between Detroit Labs. They have all of these different stakeholders and constituents, and it's a pretty big landscape to navigate. And so people partners are here to make sure that each of those individual team members are receiving the support they need to learn and grow in their individual journeys, as well as they're receiving the support that they need to make sure they're doing the best job they can at their client site. There's a little bit of a coaching role, there's a little bit of HR blend, a little bit of management, and then we also really partner with the client as well. So we're really a partner for the team member individually and for the client and for Labs to make sure that this integrated approach stays integrated even beyond the hiring process.
Yeah. Excuse me. I love the name People Partner because we are a people first company. And when we say people, it's not just the Detroit Labs team member, right? It's also our clients who we're working with on a daily basis, the connections we make with them. And it's great to see that the people partner role kind of plays across all of that. All right. So let's kind of set the stage here, right? We all transitioned to working remote back in March. After, I think, was it right after St. Patrick's Day? So I don't know if anyone got that out of their system, but we transitioned to working remote. And then Jackie, you are out there, you are talking to clients, you are talking to potential leads. Hiring was very busy, a lot of active posts. What did you see though when we transitioned to going remote?
Yeah, I mean, the beginning of the year, we were full speed ahead. We had tons of openings with our on-site clients, tons of companies coming to us wanting talent, lots of companies that were trying to grow and scale their teams. And then just all of a sudden, everybody was not knowing what the future was going to hold. So immediately, everybody went on a hiring freeze. Every company that we had been talking with was like, we're not sure what the future holds. We don't know what we were trying to adapt to working remote. We don't know how to transition to remote. A lot of companies weren't set up, especially in the automotive space. Some people didn't have access to the technologies they needed from, they didn't have laptops to take home. So I think companies were trying to adjust to being remote, that they couldn't also figure out how to keep hiring at that moment. So instantly it was like everything stopped and a freeze went with all of our on-site clients.
And let me ask you, I don't know if you got a sense of this or not, but so hiring froze, but what about projects? Did projects get canceled to kind of, help with that hiring freeze, or were projects still going full speed ahead?
Yeah, I mean, projects are still going full speed ahead. So most of our clients, what I heard is projects and expectations for what to deliver by the quarter, by the end of the year, that didn't change, but the headcount didn't increase with it. Some clients, priority shifted. So some of the projects did get scaled back, or the product that was going to launch, got postponed. But I think at that point, companies were still having to meet their kind of expectations on what was set for them, but without the headcount that they needed.
So it kind of creates a gap then, right? Like you've got projects that continue to gain speed. They have priorities, they have stakeholders that want to see things launch, yet the inability to hire at that given time for a number of different reasons certainly conflicts a little bit with those goals. Have you seen kind of over time, and with that gap, have you seen that lead to maybe a little bit of a thaw in hiring, if you will?
Yeah, I would say the first evidence of it thawing was that companies were allowed to backfill people that may have left. So that was kind of the first sign that, okay, companies are adjusting. They're recognizing that they can be productive being remote. They've learned how to interview remotely, or they're starting to learn how to interview remotely. So the backfilling piece was kind of the first sign when I had clients reach out and say, hey, we can't add headcount, but I can backfill. So that was a good indicator. And now we're getting more and more companies reaching out saying, we're thinking that we'll be able to add headcount in a couple of weeks. What do you need to do to work with us? And so we've been seeing some positive trends that have been, the last few weeks that have been coming up.
You talk about hiring remotely and going through that process remotely. That kind of leads me to my next question of what do you think the biggest hesitation is? Is it? I mean, certainly budget and understanding, where the market is going to be, but that aside, with the assumption that budget has freed up a bit. What do you see as the biggest hesitation? Do you think it's that whole hiring remotely process?
I think that a lot of companies, especially some of our bigger clients, they didn't have a way to interview remotely, and they weren't really sure how to assess technical talent remotely. So which has been cool because labs, we've had to adjust like everybody else to figure that out. And I'm really proud of our talent specialist team that have put together a really unique, I think, interview process for candidates. So we've been able to adapt and adjust. And one of the things I've talked to our clients about is how we're able to still assess that technical talent. Because when you're adding to your team, you want to make sure the personality fit is there, that they're going to fit in well with the team, they're going to all work together and be collaborative, but they still need to be able to perform technically, like they still need to be able to deliver. And I think a lot of companies, if you can't get in a room and whiteboard, they're like, well, how do we do this? We're not sure how to make this happen. Where we've been able to show through, paired programming challenges, our code challenges that we do, the way that we approach, interviewing, we've been really able to adapt to doing this remotely. And we've hired, even during the pandemic, I think 9 to 12 really great awesome developers in the last couple of months that have been really cool to see our team still have full confidence in their technical abilities because of how we've adjusted to that interview process.
You know, I'm going to kind of butt in with something here. So I forgot to mention that if you are on the live stream and you have questions, please ask them. Jackie and Karen have graciously been open to answering some questions. But I do have a good one from J.R. Smith here that is very, timely of what you're talking about, Jackie. And that's, did you have more or less applicants since going remote?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's kind of both. Like we started off with less applicants. I think the first, March, April, May, everybody was just trying to figure out what is going on. Now I think that people are able to work remotely and have figured out how to, as a candidate and as a team member, be able to be remote, but then also companies are willing to also hire remote talent. We've seen more people come in and apply because they recognize that this is remote opportunities. So we've actually seen our applicants, we've had hire people recently, but at the beginning of the pandemic, it definitely was not a ton.
That actually is, Jared, that's a fantastic question. And I do see you have a couple more that we'll likely address and throw up on the screen as we get there. But I think this is a great segue into, probably my next question here of what are the positives that have come out of this? Jackie, you talk about hiring remote and figuring out how to hire remote. But, one of the things that we talked about even before coming on here is remote hires in general, having a remote workforce. Have clients, have companies out there been more open to having a remote workforce?
Yeah, it's been really interesting because there's been some clients that, obviously we're in Detroit labs. So most of our clients are like, oh, they have to be here. But now they've seen that their employees who are in Detroit that are all remote are able to perform, meet production, hit their deadlines. And they've been really impressed with how our current on-siters have adapted to being remote, that they're now willing to consider remote candidates that are not in Detroit and not in Michigan. So we've been able to hire some former on-siters who had moved out west who are now employees, again, working with on-site clients. And it's been really neat to see companies adapt and be willing to consider candidates outside of Michigan. So now you have you've opened up a huge possibility of candidates in the talent base you may not have had access to because people may not want to move from really warm places to where it snows here. So now if they can stay where it's really warm and they can live there and still work remote, you have access to talent that you wouldn't have had access to. So it's been neat to see our clients adjust to being willing to consider remote people because we don't know how long we're going to all be remote for, but they're recognizing people can still get stuff done while they're remote.
All right, we do have another question that came in from LinkedIn that I'm going to throw up on the screen, but it does segue really well into. It's almost like the outline that I had. Like it's almost like we posted it on the internet, and the questions that are coming in are helping me segue really nicely. But we didn't actually do that, just to be clear. But we talk about doing things slightly different remote, which has also led to a remote interview process. It's also led to communication over Google Meet, Zoom, maybe not Microsoft Teams, but all the different tools that are out there. Joshua asked this really great question: has interviewing remotely taught the team anything new about the interviewing process that you wish you knew before? And I say it's a good segue because I think interviewing over a camera, over video is an interesting. A lot of times in the past it was phone screens and then in person, and now it's we're jumping right to video. So has there been anything we've learned? And this is for both Jackie and Karen, anything we've learned that we wish we knew before when it comes to the actual remote interviewing process?
I think for me and our talent specialist team, one of the things that we've talked about is just the connecting with people remotely is a lot harder to do. You have to be more intentional about that. And the way that we do that is with turning our cameras on. So a lot of candidates, have said, oh yeah, this is the first interview where I've actually got to see like what you look like. And I know that can be uncomfortable for some people, but I think the way that you have to somehow make connections when you are remote, you can't see face to face. You're not able to read body language if there's no camera, if there's no way to connect with people without cameras. So we've been able to think through what it means to connect with people remotely. And for us, that meant like having our cameras turned on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think too, it's important to think about the comfort level of the candidate that way. I think, to your point, the company taking the leadership and saying, we're going to sort of show you who we are and we're going to connect with you in this way. And then leaving it open and optional, right, for the candidate. There's been a lot of articles lately about inclusion and diversity and like the requirement to be on camera and things like that. But to welcome them, I think, in that way and sort of set the tone of here's who we are, here's what we're all about. And then you do what's comfortable for you. I think that's important to foster that comfort level, as well as to really show candidates we care about who they are. So individual to individual, it can be different and that's okay. But I love that learn of like being open to the candidates and being able to show body language and those kinds of things. And I love that they're sort of saying back that that's really helping them.
Yeah. I have a kind of a more like, I don't know if it's a hypothetical question for you, Jackie, sort of related to like remote work and what we're talking about our clients like adjusting to the future of remote work. It seems that since the freeze and now Thor, like we're making it work because there is a pandemic. And do you feel that there's been like enough trust built in general that if, let's hypothetically, the pandemic does not exist anymore, do you feel that companies are now just gonna like, oh, we hire from anywhere, we're gonna remain remote? If you were to like just kind of, will I say, just predict in a way, like how do you think that do you see this trust being like a permanently earned trust to just trust remote work and know that work is gonna get done? Or do you see it more like just temporary because of the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the company. I think, a lot of companies, they've had to adjust and they're seeing that work is still getting done. So I think a lot of companies are going to continue that just because in order to set up the office space to be, pandemic friendly or COVID friendly, that's not possible with how the office was set up previously. But I think some companies eventually, people like seeing people and like being connected, even with labs we've talked about, wanting to just be able to come in and see each other and go for walks and, down the road in a year, 6 months, who knows when. I think some people will want to be back in the office, but I think it's going to become more optional. I think it depends on the company and the industry. But I think companies have seen, people can get stuff done when they're remote. Like we're still hitting our deadlines. We're still being able to be productive. So there's some companies that have said we're not going to be back until at least next summer even like the end of next year. So it really just depends on the size of the company, what their current office is set up. Like every company is so unique. Like it's hard to predict for, all industries and all the companies. I only have visibility into the handful that we work with here.
So actually, we're talking about remote potentially staying, and so then these the remote interviews, the video interviews are likely going to stay in some way, shape, or form. And I really like that. The recommendation is for the company to turn their camera on because you're very much selling that relationship, right? And I think it's important to note that in any good interview, it's a two-way street, right? Candidate is certainly attempting to sell themselves, but at the same time, the company should be selling the company to the candidate, right? It's a two-way street. No one person is necessarily lucky to have a job, and a company should definitely be out there recruiting and promoting themselves. And this, J.R. Smith asked this question earlier before we went on the stream, which I thought was timely for this, is what's the best way to stand out on an online interview?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to what the best way to stand out with how we interview. So one of the ways that we interview developers is by doing technical code challenges. So we'll have a code challenge, and recently we've been having 2 candidates pair together. We like that because not only are you working on a project together, you're seeing how people work in a team. And a lot of development, from what I hear, I'm not a developer myself, but a lot of it is collaboration, working together, communicating. So when we do these pairing code challenges, usually it's not like it's a competition between one or the other, but it's a group. It's like maybe both people could get hired if they both do really well. So part of how to stand out with that from our perspective is to over communicate. A lot of times I think people get in their heads and they're trying to figure the problem out and they want to have the right solution. And it's not about solving the problem correctly. It's about how you talk and communicate. So are you explaining to your team member or your candidate co-buddy what you're thinking? Are you talking through the process? Are you, asking them what they think about this? Are you sharing your screen? I mean, you are sharing your screen, but you know what I mean? Like, are you talking through what you're seeing on the screen? Are you asking them to type? Like the over communicating, because people want to work with people who are collaborative, and that's what we look for is collaboration. So from our perspective, the way to stand out with that is showing how you can collaborate. It's not about getting the problem correct, yes or no. Did you pass or fail? It's not about that. It's about how do you communicate and work with the person you're pairing with.
And with that, probably leaving your imposter syndrome at the virtual door of the interview so that you don't let that overcome you and make you think, I have to be perfect and I can't show my work and I can't ask questions and I can't make mistakes, because as I've learned I talked to all of our developers and even more senior people and all levels of our client organizations, everyone has imposter syndrome. It turns out everyone thinks I'm faking it and everyone's going to figure it out soon. And so that can heighten even an interview environment where you feel that pressure. So I always advise people when I'm working with our on-siters after they've been already hired to start working through that. We do a couple lunch learns on the topic, but I think leaving that at the door and recognizing just what you said, they're there to show what they know and how they process things, not there to be the perfect programmer who knows everything all the time. Because we hire teams, right? We don't hire star individuals who are going to individually rock something all by themselves. We hire people who can be amazing together.
Like it's okay if you have to Google something in an interview. Like you Google stuff during work days, so why not Google stuff in an interview? So, but people don't want to seem like, oh, I don't know the answer, so I'm going to. Because then if you make up an answer, that's not going to be helpful. People know that you're making it up. So just be real about like what you know and what you don't know, because people would rather hire someone who's honest about, oh, I'm not actually sure. Let me look this up. Is it okay to do that? So
I like that. That alone is a nice little tagline. It's okay to Google in an interview. I like that. All right. I've got one more for Jackie, and then we're moving your way, Karen. I want to talk about platforms in general. Like we mentioned video and all the different ways from a communication standpoint when it comes to an interview. But I was talking with a different Detroit Labs team member yesterday, and we were talking about how interesting it is to see the tech platforms that have done well since we've all been home and the tech platforms that have struggled a little bit. And one of the ones that he brought up was Discord. And Discord has largely been a platform for gamers. But you all implemented that with Collabs, which, Jackie, I'll let you explain both what Collabs is and maybe talk a little bit about how we use Discord there.
Yeah, so I'll start with Collabs. Collabs is our community for developers and technology people who just want to stay in touch and learn and grow over time. We found early on, we'd interview a lot of candidates for a position, and if there's one or two positions and we talk to 20 people, well, now we have 18 people, like what do we do? Just forget that they exist? Like we wanted to keep up with people and not forget who they were and stay in touch. And Labs is really all about learning and growing and developing. So could we have a community that gets together, that gets to know each other, hangs out together when we used to hang out in person, go to happy hours, all of that. So Collabs was created out of that idea of like connection and getting to know candidates over time. And maybe in a year, there might be a better fit for them and, kind of just building those relationships over time. So Collabs is what that is. And we started doing these events we call study halls. So study halls we do once a month, and they're for people to bring their projects to a study hall night. And then we have our Detroit Lab team members will come and kind of mentor. So we have a handful, I'd say probably 6 or 7 regular Detroit Lab team members who show up in different platforms. So we have Android, iOS, JavaScript that will be there as mentors. And then we'll have collaborators that will come and bring their projects together. And then they can get feedback, they can get presentations, they can ask, oh, I'm stuck on this. Well, how would you do that? So it's been really cool to see the community come together. We had to obviously adjust to that. Being remote, we had to figure out how are we going to do this. So one of our talent specialists had mentioned Discord, which, because I'm not a gamer, had never heard of it. And I was like, I don't know what this is. And it was actually really cool to see how they were able to use it for study hall. So I will explain how we're using it, because I'm sure it does about 5,000 more things than what I know. But right now, we're able to have different rooms. So per platform, we'll have an iOS room, we'll have an Android room, we'll have a JavaScript room. So people can join whichever rooms they want to be in for the night. And then they can share their projects in that room. So Discord is cool because people that aren't the admins can share their screens. A lot of tools like Zoom, I think you have to be an admin or only certain people can share their screens. But with Discord, anybody can share their screens. You can have video on or off. There's a chat feature. So you can have a main channel where someone's in the main channel kind of facilitating, and then they can put people in different channels. So we've been able to adapt and use Discord for our study hall nights, and they've been really, really good. And I've been impressed just to watch and jump around the different channels. And I feel very techie when I'm in there because it's all black screen and white font. And I'm like, well, very technical. It's very exciting.
It's Jackie's version of the terminal, Tobi.
It's a great tool. I was in one of the study halls, and I was just the way even you could jump in from one room and go into another room, and it's just very seamless. I feel like in other platforms, if you're in a breakout room, you're just kind of there. But Discord just felt more real, like how a study hall would be in person. So yeah. Plus
yeah,
one,
I've been on a couple of Zoom calls with some other networking groups that I'm in, and they have different room capabilities, but you get put into the room and you don't know who's going to else be in the room with you, and they just magically put you there, and then you're in this room. So you don't get to choose which room you go into. You just, the leader assigns you. Where with Discord, you can decide, oh, I want to check out what's happening in the Android room, and then you can see what's going on and see a presentation, and oh, that's boring, let me jump into iOS. And so you can move around on your own, and I think that's pretty cool that you're not stuck but waiting for an admin to move you. So
awesome. I mean, kudos to the talent specialist group for figuring out that Discord not just a gaming platform, but would work well for our study halls. And it's been fun trying to embrace some of this new. I mean, we're always using new technology, probably sometimes even to a fault. But it's great when we actually find something that works well. And I think, the theme so far of what I'm hearing is the importance of connection, of being intentional with our communication, of being intentional with creating a connection, understanding the physical limitations, and utilizing the tools that we have to make sure that we get to know somebody and they get to know us. And once, once they've kind of gone through this entire Get to Know Detroit Labs, we get to know them, they go through the hiring process, then it comes time to onboarding. And remote onboarding is its own thing, its own challenge. And so, Karen, you want to talk a little bit about onboarding, the importance of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think onboarding has always been important. There was a great study back in 2012 from BCG, the Boston Consulting Group, that said it's actually the second most influential factor in whether someone leaves or stays. And turnover is really high within the first year of employment for a lot of people. They just decide if they feel welcome and belonging or not. And now that becomes more important. When I was talking to one of our new on-siters today, and they said, this doesn't feel like a new job in a lot of ways. It just feels like I'm on a different project with different people because my context hasn't changed. I get out of the same bed, I go to the same desk as I did before. And because of that, it's so much more important to instill that sense of belonging and that sense of connection. And I think one really important thing there is remembering that this is a new person. The more that you're with a company, the more you get embedded in the lingo and the stories and the in-jokes. And that's always been something we really have to watch out for, but especially now in a remote environment where an in-joke might be a little thing in a Slack channel, or you might forget to explain to someone what your job is. I had to write down, whenever I meet with someone new for the first time, the first part of the check-in has to be, let me clarify what we're doing here and what this is and what a check-in even is, because I do them all the time with 30 people or whatever. This person is brand new, they don't know. So you have to remember what it was like to not know anything and start there as far as company culture goes. So I think that connection and belonging is really important, and being mindful of how much you know versus how little the new person knows, and bridging that gap right away is really important.
What are some of the ways that you can create that connection so early on?
It's really important, I think, to give the person connections within the company. So making virtual introductions to people that are in their same tech stack, or people that have their same hobbies, or, oh, you're a parent, come join the parenting channel in Slack. We personally and very intentionally set everybody up with a buddy, and we make a lot of we put a lot of intention into picking out who we want that buddy to be for that person. And so it's just another on-siter, maybe not even on the same project, who just checks in with our person pretty consistently over the first couple of weeks to give them another connection and help with that sense of belonging. We do virtual events that we create, like happy hours, lunches with other people within the organization for them to get to know, coaching lunches on a specific specific topic, just ways to virtually bring everybody together. And then a really important thing that we do is something our talent specialist Nicole created. It's called Day Zero, and it's sort of the orientation to the organization. It's Day Zero because it comes before Day One, but also it's a software term, so it works out in a lot of ways. And with that, we've had to be really intentional about how do we use that day to introduce company culture, to get to know them a little bit, to let them get to know us a little bit. That day is a really important element of that.
Yeah, I can. Well, first of all, Tobi, have you been a buddy before? Because we use the buddy system across the entire company, which was a really important thing that we implemented years ago as we were trying to figure out this onboarding thing. Wasn't always a strong suit of ours, and obviously we're always learning. But Tobi, were you ever a buddy?
Yeah. I was gonna say I've been a buddy like several times, because actually I was gonna mention this too when you were introing OnSite. I was OnSite for like 3 years or 3.5 years on an iOS role, and that's when I first got the first-hand experience with the people partner role. And that is like when you were trying to say like it's kind of like staffing, but it's different. And I think these are the things that like make it different, because as a developer who is working at this company, it didn't feel like quote unquote I'm just like a resource, like that is just going somewhere. There was like a continuous relationship with Detroit Labs as a company, like even just beyond OnSite, and being able to touch base with other people on other projects and learn new things, both technical things and just hobby stuff, like other people that play chess, for example, and things like that. And it makes a big difference. But yeah, like I love being a buddy. Is just it's a good way, as Karen said, like to kind of remember how it was like on your first week. What didn't you know? What would you like this person to know? How can you set them up for success? And also beyond that, it's just a great opportunity to make a new friend. Like I feel like at Labs, one thing that I think a lot of places say this, but I think I'm saying this from personal experience. I've really experienced like people who work with at Labs feel like family. Feels like a lot of my best friends are from Labs as well. So it is an opportunity to like meet someone new and build a relationship. So anytime I get an opportunity to do that, I always just say yes and jump at it. So it's been fun. And Jackie and Karen and the rest of our OnSite team, I think they do that great job of like explaining what you said, like like living out what you said when you say like, what is OnSite? It's kind of like staffing, but different. And it's all these connections and engagement that kind of makes it very different.
So, Karen, I want to jump back to Day Zero. I think, I can talk from personal experience. Nicole got me involved in Day Zero probably 2 years ago now, Jackie, a year ago. I don't know what time is. But it's an opportunity for me personally, at least, to come in and introduce myself, but more importantly, meet new OnSite team members. And one of the things that I really like is, and this is largely when I come in, is the focus on making sure that baseline information about Detroit Labs, talk about a little bit about the story, talk about our values, and what drives us. I think that's a great opportunity during that Day Zero to really communicate that stuff. And oftentimes that's stuff that maybe is slightly out there in the public space, but you don't get those, to your point, the old historical conversations, right? It's an opportunity to kind of get that baseline information out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just a nice way of intentionally letting people know, especially when you come and when other people from our team come to, even if it's coming into the virtual room, to get to know people and to say, I know we all are all busy, but you, this new person, you matter, because that continues to be the culture once they come into the company. We want them to feel that from the beginning, is that they as an individual matter to all of us. And it's made us get a little bit creative with how we do a Day Zero presentation and what kinds of things we talk about. And my partners and I in the people partner role have thought a lot about, keeping it light, but also making it interesting, getting to know each other. So we ask silly questions like, hey, what's everybody's quarantine purchase? Like, what's the thing you like splurged on or paid a lot more money for than you normally would have? And then we have like, also, here's what we do and here's what we can do for you. We bring in specific examples of things from our engagement survey that people have said about our role as a way to give context. Because again, we're trying to be really mindful of I think if your whole presentation for a first day is all acronyms and in jokes or inside lingo, the person is going to feel detached right away. So how do you open up those doors and bring them into your language as well as get to know them? I think that's a really useful use of that day and of that time. And then when they start, they already have this background with them.
Was it challenging to like switch to remote onboarding?
It was a little bit, especially because before, a lot of our practices and a lot of how we did all of our relationships when someone is onboarded involved going to the physical place with them and meeting them sort of on their turf or in their context. So we would go to Ford, or we would go to one of our client sites and we would be there in person and bring food. I mean, food was a really big part of our people.
I was just going to say, food is what I miss the most, because that was a huge part of like collabs, check-ins, food, lunches, all the food. Coffee, baked goods.
What you lose with that is not just the deliciousness of the food, which, let's think about that for a second, but also you lose the little, I was talking about this with someone yesterday, you lose the little like mini interactions that come up, right? Like if someone is getting the food and they're like, oh, I'm not going to get that piece of like the taco bar because I'm vegan. Oh, all of a sudden you've had the opportunity to learn something new about someone that they might not volunteer about themselves. If you're in line with someone at Starbucks and you're just chit-chatting about the weather, or you see a newspaper headline and you both have a reaction to it, now the context for that relationship is richer, and we lose that when all of our interactions have to be so much more intentional and formal in a way. I think online has formalized a lot of things. So we had to sort of break that down and say, well, then how can we bake in other opportunities for more informal stuff to arise, because that really weaves the fabric together. And for someone to feel that sense of belonging, it can't just be the formal buttoned up stuff. It needs to be that, you need to know how do you ask for time off, but you also need to just know each other. And so we've baked it. We've had to be really intentional, your point, Tobi, about baking in the silly quarantine question, or what's your favorite topping on a hot dog or a carrot dog or a turkey dog, whatever you're eating, like what do you put on it, right? And you get some pretty hot like mustard versus relish debates going. Which is, it keeps it light and fun, but it also, again, it goes back to instilling that sense of belonging. That's really important.
Tobi's big quarantine purchase was a juicer recently. So his new hobby is cleaning a juicer.
That's what I did all yesterday.
Yeah, well, that's your new life now. Use the juicer once, clean for a month. All right. So I think we've established the fact that this is all new territory for a lot of folks. As a company, what should they keep in mind?
I think a company should keep in mind is one to, I think with interviewing too, like, right, letting go of some of the fear and being willing to try new things in a way that's partnering with the people, being really mindful that you need to provide a really high quality experience to your prospective employees and as you onboard. So you're not going to try new things and use them as guinea pigs, but still being willing to take some risks or try something new and sort of own it if it's not working as well and figure out a way to make it work better right in the moment and then learn from it later. I think that's really important to keep in mind. This topic of remote working has always been so full of, I think, a little sense of fear for a lot of people. And so it's sort of forcing all of our companies to think about new things and think about new ways. And I think also think about beyond onboarding, right? I think onboarding always has been a longer process. I don't think it's ever been just orientation and then hit the ground running. You're part of the team now. I think it's always needed to be a more ongoing and thoughtful process, and even more now, because you're not going to run into that person at the kitchen or at the water cooler and see that they're not doing well. You're not going to go to their client site and see them working alone in a corner and no one's talking to them. You're not going to get those visual cues that maybe something isn't working out as well as it could be. So you have to be really intentional and mindful about following up with people as they're coming into the company, giving strategically timed reminders about things that you said during orientation, because there's a lot of information. It needs to be, but there's certain things that you just need to highlight later. There's certain things that don't take effect until 30 days after hire. So yeah, you'll mention them orientation, but in 30 days, follow up with them and make sure to remind them in a really kind way. Don't assume that everything was retained right away. And do surveys, check in on the efforts that you're putting out there to make sure that they're working for you, whether it's pulse surveys, whether it's check-ins, find ways to learn what's working and what's not, and be willing to iterate quickly on those types of things, right? This is not the time for this is the way we've always done it, because you can't do it the way you've always done it anyway. And particularly if you try something new, that it doesn't have to be your new thing. Don't be married to it. Try it. If it works, keep doing it. Figure out why it worked. If it doesn't work, stop doing it, and figure out why it didn't work and iterate from there. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I like that. And I also, I had a question coming up here, but I think you kind of hit on it. And that was, what do you do to make sure that it doesn't end after onboarding? And you mentioned a little bit about surveys. And I think, even earlier in the show today, you talk about the importance of one-on-one check-ins, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think to make sure that onboarding day 0 isn't the last thing you do, having really intentional one-on-one check-ins with new people, and give them the permission in that space to be really honest with you about how things are going, if that's what you're curious about. And so, especially here in the Midwest, right? If someone says, hey, how are you? You say, I'm fine. You say, I'm okay. If you say, how's it going? And someone says, oh, it's going. Oh, that means something terrible has happened. And that's it. That's like the biggest thing there is in the Midwest. So give them the permission to say, hey, how are you? But how are you really? And make sure that that is really clear, that it's an open, it's a true, if it is an open door, make sure it feels like an open door. Make sure it feels like an opportunity to provide feedback, and not in a not defensive way, right? Nothing that someone says about the onboarding process is going to hurt me personally. I want to learn about it. So make sure that you're really clear that that's your intention, and make the atmosphere really welcoming, and do those one-on-one check-ins. Don't wait for people to come to you. It's your job as the company to make them feel comfortable and welcome.
That kind of segues into a question I was kind of curious about, because I know like the people partner role, one of the things that you do is like when someone is at a client and there's like maybe like miscommunication or things that need, like, not every time things go smoothly. So when things are not going smoothly, you kind of step in to kind of collect feedback and navigate the situation to make it a harmonious relationship. And I was just kind of curious, like now that things are remote, in having like difficult conversations like that, has like your experience been compared to when it was in person?
That's a great question. I think the remote environment makes it a little bit easier for everyone to try and avoid having the difficult conversations, or the crucial conversations is the favorite term here, right? It feels easier to avoid them. You can't come to someone's workspace and see them and say, hey, I need to talk to you. So creating the environment for that conversation has been something that it requires a little bit more proactive activity. But then also just sort of making sure that you're really almost over communicating in a way, right? That you start the conversation with, here's the intention, or here's what we want to figure out, or here's what the goal is. And that's true whether you're receiving the feedback from someone and it's difficult feedback to receive, or whether you're having to provide some difficult feedback. Making sure the environment feels as safe as it can, and that people aren't going into it wondering what's going to happen, right? You're not going to Slack someone and say, hey, I need to talk to you, and say nothing else, because that will make anyone feel like, well, I'm getting fired. That's what happens. Especially with someone that has, perceived authority or power, to Slack them or to text them or email them and say, hey, we need to talk, or hey, let's set up a meeting, or just to appear on their calendar. And be like, what is this person doing on my calendar? What's going on? I don't want them to say, why is Karen on my calendar? Right? I want them to know, here's why we're meeting in advance. And then I want to have that conversation and make it feel safe. And then I do like when we can have video when it's possible and comfortable, but if that's not comfortable for all of our people, especially some of our female team members at certain companies just feel like it's just easier not to. And so then we have to think a little bit more, and maybe that's a phone call, right? It's great to have Google Meet and these other technologies, but maybe sometimes it's a phone call, and that's an easier place for people to have the conversation. And then making sure that if you're going to have distractions in your background, because we're all at home and we all do, just acknowledging it and making it safe for them to have it too, right? It's like, oh, I'm so sorry, my kid just said something. Don't be sorry, right? And then you're the same, right? Acknowledge at the top, my kids are here today. They might pop in or they might be loud. I'm sorry, just acknowledging what the environment is and then going forward is really important.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to kind of give a little statement here for anyone watching. If you do have questions, as we kind of getting ready to wrap it up here, but if you have any questions for Karen and Jackie, please post them in the chat and we'll ask them real quick. But as whether that happens or not, I do want to kind of wrap it up on a story that Jackie told me the other day. Yeah, Jackie, this one's for you. I think we've spent a lot of time talking about the compromises that come with being remote, and I don't think we've spent a lot of time. And I say we, I mean the global we of everybody that's putting out content, that's having conversations. I don't think we have spent time talking about the positives, like what you can actually do with remote that you couldn't do with in person. And Jackie, you attended an event, I think within the last week. Maybe you want to tell us about it, that it could have only happened remote.
Yeah, it was very exciting. Mary and I, who's on our biz dev team, we attended a virtual cooking class remotely with a private chef. And we can't afford to have a private chef come to our house. So this was something that we were really excited about, because it's a chef that's traveled the world and been in lots of places. And he's now back in Detroit and cooks for very fancy people. And this networking group that we're a part of put on this event that was a remote friendly cooking class with him. So they emailed you the couple days before, the list of all the ingredients, which you could also just have delivered to your house. I went out trying to find these fancy peppers I'd never heard of, but found all the things, brought it home. It had all the steps of like, prepare this before the class starts, cut up all these things, dice up all this stuff. And then he walked you through. There were 3 or 4 different things we made. So he's like, okay, now we're going to cut an onion. This is how you cut an onion. So he showed us on camera, like how he cuts his onion, and then we all cut our onions. So some people had their cameras on, some didn't, but it was kind of cool to get to know the chef. You could ask questions. He's like, okay, put it in the pan. And so it took probably about an hour and a half, and we all made a meal together. And then we were able to, all eat kind of together. I turned my camera off for the eating part, but it was just it was a cool event that I don't think normally, I'm not sure I would have attended that in person. That just seems like a lot, but to have something to do with these group of women that I hadn't connected with before, it was a kind of a cool networking opportunity. And then also with this chef that is just amazing. The food was, now I have 4 really fancy recipes that I can make for future me. So it was a cool opportunity. And it was also cool to see how this organization turned something that, trying to figure out how to connect with people remote and virtually. This was a really interesting, it's not just another Zoom call. It was really delicious, Mary. But it wasn't just another Zoom call that we were just, having another speaker give a presentation, because we've kind of been there, done that for the last 6 months. So this was another way to have an interesting way to connect with people over something that was really different.
All right, we got a couple questions that came in. One for Karen as a people partner. Is a people partner always trying to help no matter what? Or is there a point where you say this is not a good fit?
That's a really great question. I think help can sometimes be saying, this doesn't seem to be a great fit. The people partner role is, like I said before, a blend of HR. So it can involve helping someone separate from the company if things are not working well, or if there are disciplinary measures that just need to happen. So it's certainly not, I'm your best friend no matter what. I feel like I'm your work best friend. And sometimes that means having a hard conversation or helping you find sort of the next step. If what you're on right now isn't a good fit for your skill set or for your personality or whatever the situation may be. So it's a great question. It's not being a yes person. It's definitely helping people on both sides, the client and the team member, helping everybody navigate that relationship for the best outcome for everybody.
Awesome. We've got another one here. While interviewing remotely, are there any standout things candidates have done to stand out and help make that personal connection? Interviews can feel a lot more formal when separated by a screen.
Yeah, that is a really good question. And I would say, that I feel like that's the responsibility of the interviewer, is to make the connection with the candidates. I mean, you want as a candidate to show up and be personable and try not to be too formal and be yourself. But I think hopefully the environment that is created for you is an opportunity for you to be able to do that. So it really depends on how the interview is structured, and that's the responsibility of the interviewer. I think if you're in a situation where you are doing a technical challenge, like we mentioned earlier, really communicating and sharing your thought process is, like I said, it's more important to do that than it is to get the question right or wrong. So I think overall, though, I feel like that's the responsibility of the people interviewing, is to make a space where you can be yourself and share those kind of personal connections. But it needs to be the right format. You don't want to overshare. If they're asking you, a specific question and you share about your dog, it may not be the right time to do that. So it kind of just depends on the format.
Speaking of dog, I do miss the fact that yours is not barking at every movement outside at all times.
She's not here today. She's grounded from the... It would have been very distracting for all of us.
All right. If there are no other questions, I think we're going to wrap it up. Tobi, anything left that you want to talk about?
No, I thought this was great. I could just echo in what Jackie was just said about interviewing, being part of a few interviews. And I think the candidate already has a lot of pressure on them. And as the interviewer, like if you're listening and you do interviews, to just be more intentional about making them comfortable and making that one less thing to worry about. And once the candidate is relaxed, you're truly able to evaluate what they can do. So yeah, I just wanted to echo that and just thank you, Jackie and Karen, for like answering all the difficult questions and even the ones you like just live like that. So thank you for doing that and sharing your thoughts with us.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure.
Yeah, it's fun.
All right, Karen, Jackie, thank you. I'm gonna send you backstage if you want to hold on, and we can chat after the live stream. No one will know what we talk about at that live. Don't miss out. But Karen, Jackie, thank you.
Thank you.
Tobi, that was wonderful, was it not?
It was great. It was great, and it was just like OnSite has a special place in my heart because I was OnSite for 3 years. So it was great to hear from Jackie and Karen.
Well, I appreciate that too, because you can share some firsthand experiences. Obviously, I'm of no help when it comes to real world experiences there, and it was really great because this was very much a learning opportunity for me, seeing how we do remote hiring. I loved hearing about the fact that as a company you turn your camera on to create the connection.
Yeah.
I like that we're using Discord. There's a lot of really interesting things, and I do know also that the people partners work very hard to keep that connection with team members and make them feel core part of Detroit Labs, because that is not always an easy thing. So if you are watching this and you're thinking about hiring, let us know. We can help you. It does potentially seem a little scary, but we promise you it's not. It actually opens up many, many more opportunities now than ever before. So thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us on all the different social channels. We have content pretty much everywhere, right, Tobi?
Everywhere. And also, once Dan and I do our cooking class, we'll make sure it's also live. So
yes, it'll be quick. Grilled cheese is fast. We butter it. We throw it on the little pan, right? Little
with
cheese
some
on
juice.
there. So, well, yeah, you can bring the juice. Sometimes I throw a little turkey on my grilled cheese.
Oh, I thought you said you threw a little turkey in your juice. I would have just fallen out of my chair.
A little protein in the juice. But sometimes a little turkey and the grilled cheese, spice it up a bit. Anyways, thank you everybody for tuning in. This will be available forever because it's the internet. Share it out with friends.